Welcome back to Marvelous Videos. I'm Rylan, and this is the top 12 Killing Floor monsters. Ah yes, mods. The gaming community is nothing if not innovative and open-handed. These days, you'll see DLC packs floating around the myriad of online gaming stores like packets of chips at a 7-Eleven. But pre-monetization modules were a great way of improving upon the established schematics of your favorite games with layers of original, personalized content that give you an entirely different experience. So you can imagine our intrigue when we first caught wind of this obscure cooperative first-person shooter game that blew up on Steam way back in 2009. Heralded as the second coming of the Counter-Strike wave. We'll admit that this total conversion of an Unreal Tournament 04 mod has a ways to go when it comes to engaging storytelling, as opposed to its halftime counterpart, whose strength is the interplay between the plot and the gameplay. But Killing Floor nonetheless makes up for all of its deficits with one simple offering: unbridled violence against zombie-like mutants. And that is definitely good with us. Developed on the Unreal 2.5 engine, the very first Killing Floor game introduced us to Horzine Biotech and their ungodly experiments with a restrained but effective sales pitch. Aim for the head and watch your ammo. There will be no Hail Mary bullet spraying in this game. It demands efficiency, strategy, and battle-savvy sensibilities. For those unfamiliar, here's the basic premise for you. Horzine Biotech is a military-contracted biotechnology company that is conducting genetic manipulation and cloning experiments in an attempt to create super soldiers for the British government. However, something goes terribly wrong as the project overseer, Dr. Kevin Clamley, and his subjects transform into grotesque, mutilated, and mutated versions of themselves and are famished for flesh and won't stay down unless they're shot in the head. Well, in most cases anyway. Killing Floor 2 expands upon the first game's relatively sparse gameplay elements, adding more bosses and refining the perk system to make the gaming experience more on-the-edge experience, with its fluidness and challenges. Despite its simplistic premise, the Killing Floor franchise, low-key, is an all-time classic, and most of that is due to the sheer monstrosity of the depraved Zeds and their overlords. So, let's take a look at the top 12 Killing Floor monsters, shall we? Before we begin, however, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thanks. Now, let's get killing.
I'm back, and I've got some new tricks.
The Patriarch, the original Big Zeddy of them all, Dr. Kevin Clamley, emerges as the mech mutant and the final boss of the first Killing Floor game. And after getting a good look at him, we can definitely see why. Panicked by advancing government officials pressuring to shut down his program, Clamley made a last-ditch effort to produce a true super soldier. He subjected himself to the experiments. The results were equal parts awesome and terrifying. The Patriarch is a deranged monster, half robot, half eldritch beast, and the overall embodiment of brutality. His claw-like right arm delivers devastating slash damage, not unlike the thrust damage from his chest tentacles. Yes, that's a thing. A plethora of body modifications have amped up his fighting abilities, while forcing players to rely on tactics. His left arm has been replaced by a weapons platform, with a rocket launcher and a nasty chain gun, which, by the time KF2 rolls around, he can use while advancing on the players. Thank you, scale-adjusted Hell on Earth difficulty. The left side of his body is practically impervious, as it negates 90% of the damage that your weapons can inflict. In fact, his only weak spots he has are the bulging right arm and his tentacle, which only appears when he is on the offense. Both of them take 30% extra damage, so it's best to target them, as even headshots are no match for this guy. Seriously, fighting him is no joke. Stocking up on ammo is crucial, thanks to his healing injections and the waves of minions he spawns each time he heals. Oh, and if he sees you kill one of them, he goes into rage mode, upgrading all his stats for just a few seconds, and we'll tell you why later on in this video. Getting to him is made tougher by his cloaking ability, which he activates every time he gets low on health. So set your sights on going commando when selecting perks. Also, when you fight him in KF2, he can shoot up to 5 mortars at your team. So when you start running, don't stop. King Fleshpound. The boss version of the Fleshpound units that appear in every Killing Floor installment King Fleshpound lives up to his billing. The original Fleshpounds were envisioned as the true super soldiers by the British, angled beasts with metal spikes embedded in their skin, metal gauntlets for hands, and a metal visor draped over their eyes. They were pumped with steroids to make them freakishly huge and strong, but if the torture hadn't broken their minds, drugs certainly did the job. Their chest jewel is the only thing keeping them together. These rage-filled brutes were tough to kill in the first killing floor, but not invulnerable, explosives being their key weakness. KF2 ups the ante by taking this away from King Fleshpound, adding on a bunch of powerful upgrades. His gauntlets alone negate 80% of the damage that weapons can inflict, and while his head and chest jewel remain his weak spots, this is where the similarities end. Unlike regular Fleshpounds, the king can block incoming attacks, reducing their effects by at least 10%. And of course, being he's a killing floor boss, he isn't gonna die after just a single round of combat. At 65% health, King Fleshpound can cause explosions by pounding his fists in the ground. At 50%, his jewel fires a beam that can tally up to 10 devastating hits in a second. And when his health bar falls below 20%, he spawns a shield, which needs to be completely dissolved before you can attack him any further. Oh, and did we mention that while all this is happening, he's spawning disgusting quarter pounders at each phase to fight your team? Yep, the king's princes are just as nasty as their daddy. It's best to avoid gimmicks when fighting this one, as fire and poison are quite weak against him. Hitting him hard and fast is the only way to go, and if you're smart enough, you can exploit the king's rage to your advantage. Abomination. A bloat is a juiced up version of Killing Floor's base units, quite literally bloated up because of the poisonous bile that they carry around in their bodies. This bile is extremely potent and extremely dangerous as well. If exposed, players can lose vision for a few seconds, and their health bar begins deteriorating at a gradual pace. The Abomination is what happens when a bloat dons a wearable Iron Maiden, starts dual-wielding axes and spawning toxic little explorer versions of itself. It is the fourth boss introduced in KF2, and perhaps the most twisted of them all. Bloats are ordinary units, so they have ordinary weaknesses. Their bile attack is only effective if they vomit on you, or you step in a pool of their disintegrated bodies. Their deaths are almost comedic, resembling the post-death nervous shocks that are experienced by chickens. A well-placed headshot is enough to deal with these buggers. But there's nothing funny about the Abomination. It retains all the strengths of a regular bloat, with none of its weaknesses. It can block attacks, which adds to the protection that its armor provides. The armor itself is quite a pain in the ass. 3 pieces: head, chest, and back, all of which need to be destroyed in order to start dealing any damage to it, while it goes into a rage-fueled frenzy as each one of them are destroyed. And of course, their damage resistance increases with increasing difficulty settings. But Abomination's true nightmarish ability is the creation of Abomination spawns. These tiny little creatures rush at your team and explode when they're in close proximity, immediately poisoning them. The splash damage alone is enough to make them an absolute nuisance. What makes things worse is their health bar. Why is it so damn high? The Abomination can suck in your teammates and other Zed units that are nearby, dealing great damage to the former and converting the latter into Abomination spawns themselves. Like King Fleshpound, Abomination is also prone to bouts of destructive rage, triggered when its health bar drops to 75%, 50%, and 20% respectively. Trust us when we say that it is the worst 9-second blitz we have ever faced in our lives. The Abomination will also try to lure your team in, while laying traps and creating massive pools of poisonous bile and swarming you with his spawns, so a long-ranged battle is your best way to deal with this beast.
You come here and make all this noise. How am I meant to work? You must stop living.
Dr. Hans Volter. If you've ever wondered what Green Goblin would do in an FPS scenario, Dr. Hans Volter is probably the closest thing you're going to get to an answer. This mad scientist and the primary antagonist of KF2 takes the unhinged maniacal energy of Norman Osborn and turns it up to 20. He's been experimenting with genetic manipulation and cloning since World War II, and in the absence of the Patriarch, is the best suited leader for all those dreadful Zeds. He doesn't have a swanky glider, but his exoskeleton and metallic forearms keep him well protected, reducing damage by 20% and 80% respectively. The exoskeleton also acts as his weapons hub, keeping him supplied with 3 different types of bombs and twin MKB-42 guns, which he breaks out as the battle progresses. Once you start fighting him, he keeps his distance and uses his gun to attack your team. But as you keep inflicting damage, he breaks out his bomb bag. At 78%, he starts summoning minions to aid him in his attack, who reappear twice, only to keep you on the defense. While his attack patterns are fairly predictable, I mean, come on, he downright announces his next attack. But there are two things that make him a deadly adversary: his eventual ascent into bomb-based megalomania and his shield. His shield is particularly annoying. At 3 stages during the fight, Dr. Volter will activate his shield and then try to run away, only to grab hold of your team members and suck out their health points, replenishing his own in exchange. The only way to attack him is to destroy his shield. Otherwise, you'll end up as a power-boosting snack for him. As he loses health, his attack patterns become more erratic, relying on bombs and melee attacks over guns, utilizing entire barrages of HE bombs in his death throws. Luckily, his head is more prone to damage than the other bosses on this list, giving you a simple yet effective strategy to fight against him.
By my calculations, this doesn't look very good for you.
The Matriarch, a wise philosopher from the Hidden Leaf Village, once said that the next generation will always outdo the previous one. Judging by her powers, it appears Rachel Claimley has done just that. Introduced as an ally in KF1, she still opposes her father, but has decided to adopt other, methods to deal with him. Hellbent on revenge, she underwent the same procedure as her father, turning into a gut-wrenching rendition of her past self. With her mutated genes, grotesque physiology, and perchance for wanton destruction, it would be a wonder if she wasn't the most formidable boss out there. Oh, and you might not want to get in her way of the family business. As the name suggests, the Matriarch has most of the powers that her father had, albeit far more effective and lethal to your team. Instead of the chain gun and rocket launcher, the Matriarch sports 2 energy-based cannons, the plasma cannon and the Tesla cannon, which are basically upgrades of the former pair, hopped up on a cocktail of power boosts. The plasma cannon is the most powerful weapon in the whole game, as it can drain a character's health and armor, even if they're both maxed out. She also lacks any of the design flaws that her father had. She is cloaked in an armor that protects her cannon, as well as her head, and you just might break through both to land direct hits on both those areas. Moreover, as you're fighting her, she will keep spawning various robotic units that will trap you if you're not careful or quick enough, right up until the moment where you break her armor. After you manage to do that, she turns into a berserker, violently lunging at you with her claw and tentacles to deal hefty melee damage. Your best, and maybe only hope, is to get her out of her armor, as quickly as possible while ducking and shooting. Husk. Visualize the extremist soldiers from Iron Man 3, with a flamethrower attached to their right arms. Well, you get the idea of what a Husk looks like. These straight-jacketed human torches are actually cybernetic soldiers, programmed with a simple yet deadly algorithm. Acquire target, aim, and shoot. The only normal enemy units with a ranged weapon, Husks are, in essence, pyro specimens. The attached flamethrower is their primary weapon, which works exactly as you might expect it to, billowing out a continuous jet of armor-piercing flames that will turn you crispy if you stay within its range for too long. By the time KF2 comes around, they gain the ability to self-destruct and deal massive area damage to all players within the vicinity. They also have a higher chance of spawning robotic counterparts who just keep pressing the assault. We'll talk about those guys in a little bit. As a result, they're amongst the more tricky units to deal with. The fact that their only weak spot is their backpack doesn't really make things any better, because landing a hit anywhere else might as well be a tickle for the Husk. Except for the head, of course. Luckily, if you've reached level 5 for the Firebug perk, you'll be effectively immune to the Husk's flames, and have a much easier time dealing with them. Our tip is simple. Just aim, keep your distance, and use microwave attacks as much as possible to eliminate them quickly, because trust us, you do not want them around for a long time. Scrake. The Scrake is your answer to the age-old question, what if Captain Hook got jacked, became crazier than he already was, and replaces Hook with a chainsaw? Scrakes are one of the biggest threats in the KF franchise, and their appearance only conveys that. Tortured, expressionless, and mangled with a rage frenzy that would put its fellow Fleshpounders to shame. Scrakes use blitzkrieg tactics to make up for their hulking figures, bum rushing their targets with wild swings of their chainsaws that puts close quarters combat out of the question. And besides, unlike Fleshpounders, once Scrakes get enraged, they stay that way until they die. So your only option is to take them down before they take you down. And with their deceptively extensive range of attack, they will, if you don't pay attention. A Scrake's rage trigger depends on your difficulty level. The tougher the level, the easier it is to piss them off. Luckily for you, their heads are extremely vulnerable to damage, and the Gunslinger perk's dual Desert Eagles are the perfect weapons to deal with them quickly and effectively, especially when you enter Zed time. They are practically immune to fire and poison, but RPGs are like their kryptonite, able to one-shot them if timed precisely. Bonus points for the developers for making them look like the archetypal slasher villain, complete with a 6-second post-decapitation bleed-out period that is further proof of their psychotic strength. E.D.A.R, Elite Defense and Assault Robots, or E.D.A.Rs, were originally created to eliminate Horzine mercenaries, but along the way, these corrupted robots started picking their own targets. E.D.A.Rs are a mixed bag. While their inherent fighting capabilities aren't that extensive, their agility, numbers advantage, and unique abilities make them excellent support units for the heavy hitters on the enemy roster. E.D.A.Rs come in 3 types: blasters, bombers, and trappers, and while all of them have the same physical composition, they wildly differ in their battle efficiency. Blasters and bombers are exactly what they sound like, ranged units that use powerful guns and bombs to deliver heavy damage. However, E.D.A.Rs aren't all that strong, and are vulnerable to pretty much every type of weaponry. Remember though, E.D.A.Rs aren't all that strong, and are vulnerable to pretty much every type of weaponry that you have, except for poison for reasons that should be obvious. They can compensate for it with their enhanced dodging mechanisms, making them harder to target when they approach in a swarm. The most annoying type of E.D.A.Rs though is the trappers, who have the ability to incapacitate everything within the vicinity, friend and foe, especially when it's destroyed. You can see why we call them excellent support units. One trapper can lead a Scrake on an unstoppable Gorefast if they time it well, but unfortunately for them, that is where their usability runs out. For all the unique abilities, E.D.A.Rs are very easy to defeat. All you have to do is aim for their chest pieces, which gives you hits of 3.5 time multiplier. EMPs and explosives are especially useful, as they allow you to incapacitate these metallic gnats without wasting too much time or ammo. E.D.A.Rs are a common sight in the Matriarch boss fight, and have a 21% probability of spawning from a Husk in KF2, making them by far the most insistent enemies of the whole lot. Gorefast. This sickening creation looks like it came straight out of Ramsay Bolton's wet dreams. The Gorefast is appropriately named. Flayed, mutilated, jawless, and missing an arm. This hideous monstrosity is one of the stronger variations of the base units of Killing Floor. The arm that isn't missing is strapped with a nasty blade that is liable to dealing considerable damage upon impact. Gorefasts are seemingly mindless, as they will charge at you without a second thought, and often sacrifice themselves just to get a hit in. That said, they're fast and erratic, switching from hack and slash to spinning movements in a jiffy. They can block attacks, deferring 20% of the intended damage, and they even keep coming after you, even after you've been decapitated, if their health bar doesn't run out, although their attacks lose half their strength. KF2 introduces a 2-bladed version of the Gorefast, called the Gore Fiend, who replace spawns when a Gorefast dies, mounting the pressure on the players. Shotguns are your best friends when dealing with these mutated mutes, and while defeating them isn't nearly as tough as some of the other names on this list, it still ranks high enough on the Gorometer. Slasher. The motion capture artist for Killing Floor described this enemy as a cokehead, a statement we find ourselves agreeing with more and more every gameplay. With claws for fingernails and talons for feet, Slasher is amongst the more visually terrifying offerings of Killing Floor. Developed as a more aggressive variant of the base level Clots, who we'll discuss shortly, Slashers can be distinguished by the claw marks found on their bodies. These marks aren't from surviving a mutiny though, they're self-inflicted, which represents the sadomasochist tendencies of this unit. They are fast, erratic, and aggressive, leaping onto players with quick movements, and grabbing them to deal spontaneous melee damage while incapacitating them for a short period of time. What sets them apart, however, is their seemingly higher environmental awareness. Slashers will execute a small roll to avoid getting hit, making them harder to hit and much harder to kill. An SMG is your best option for dealing with these guys, as the sustained successive firing of an automatic weapon leaves the Slasher disoriented, leaving them prone to fatal shots, especially to the head.
Keep focus.
Clots. Patient 0, Weapon 1. The original subjects of the Horzine Biotech cloning and gene manipulation project, Clots are the most commonly found units in the Killing Floor franchise. They were created from the DNA of Dr. Claimley's deceased son, in a twisted attempt at faux reincarnation. These clones were exposed to controlled dosages of serotonin, with the intention to make them subservient to Horzine. That resulted in failure, however, when all the subjects lost their minds and started indulging in casual self-mutilation and even cannibalism. Now they look more like zombies than human beings. Wiry, hairless, with blood-caked extremities and absentee genitalia. Clots behave like zombies as well, heedlessly charging at players to deal melee damage with their filed teeth and claw-like nails. Though not the most effective enemy type by a long margin, Clots form the basis of every enemy type in the franchise, and are still to be taken seriously. A horde of them can easily overpower your squad if left unchecked. Clots are even used as collaterals by bosses. For instance, when Abomination sucks them in and transforms them into spawns. While they're mostly cannon fodder, they can come in handy while fighting the Patriarch. Because he thinks they're all his children, due to their DNA, the Patriarch will stop attacking you if he accidentally kills a Clot. Conversely, he will rage at you if he sees you killing one. So, best avoid killing them in his line of sight. A quick headshot from an SMG is the most efficient way to clear the field of any Clots. Siren. Odysseus had to be tied to a mast, and Orpheus had to sing his way past them to avoid being driven insane. But there is one thing that Greek mythology makes abundantly clear, is that sirens are definitely bad news. Their sweet songs are known to drive men to their deaths, or even madness. Killing Floor reimagines these mythological murderers with their own sadistic twist. One of the 2 female enemy units in the entire franchise, Sirens are believed to have been cloned from the DNA of Dr. Klingsley's wife. That would explain their exceptionally tortured existence. Sirens are depicted as emaciated corpse-like women who are bound by metallic straitjackets in KF1 and metal harnesses in KF2. Riffing off the mythological sirens, Horzine's mad scientists tweaked their vocal cords to give these women advanced sonic capabilities. Sirens usually deal melee damage as they can't wield weapons, but their most powerful weapon is their voice. They emit a powerful sonic burst through their screams, which deal a massive rapid-fire wave of damage to players within 9 meters of their vicinity, regardless if they have armor on or not. The effects of this scream on the Siren lasts up to 2.2 seconds after it's all over, effectively shielding them from your attacks, and when the Sirens scream, bombs get repelled, quite literally. So, as Sirens can repulse grenades and similar projectiles when screaming, its effects on you last longer if you're caught unawares, increased disorientation and rapid health deterioration being commonplace. Since it has no traditional weaknesses, the best way to tackle a Siren is to incapacitate it, and then keep attacking its head and neck from a distance. Because trust us when we say that this is one lady whose love songs you do not want to hear. And with that, we end our list. What are your favorite monsters from this video game franchise? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to send a like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. For marvelous videos, I'm Rylan. Have a good one, be safe, and thanks for watching.